December 7th, 1941. September 11th, 2001. And January 6th, 2021.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol.
The entire summer of 2020, folks in the Democrat Party said rioters and looters were peaceful protesters.
He says this is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
The lawlessness, the violence, the chaos.
I don't know, we could have the summer of love.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others.
Everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not, and we should not.
Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists.
Let's have a discussion with these police, and let's go in and quietly and calmly sit down in this room, calmly and quietly.
These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror.
Domestic terrorism. It's that basic, it's that simple.
We are also confronting a domestic threat.
The domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States.
The strength of democracy is the principle that everyone should be treated equally.
The law enforcement response to the rioters at the Capitol yesterday is being criticized as a double standard.
A double standard.
There's definitely a double standard. It's not even up for debate.
More than anything, we need to restore the honor, the integrity, the independence of the Department of Justice in this nation. It's been so badly damaged. The American people saw it in plain view. I hope it sensitizes them to what we have to do.
My name's David Summerall. I started Stop Hate Awareness Program back in 1992 during the LA riots. I saw what the media did with a partial video and how they divided the country on racial lines. And Stop Hate is an acronym. It stands for Start Turning Off Prejudice, Heal Attitudes Through Education. And it's just our attempt to try to bring people together and communicate, sometimes have those more difficult conversations, but they're necessary for us to understand each other. We tried to find a way that we could help the people from California that were going through the riot, but from Texas, what can you really do? You can't throw money at it, you can't put the fire out, and you can't break up the fight. So we decided a prevention campaign was probably the best route to try to prevent the next occurrence. So we stood against groups like the KKK. We even stood against the Nation of Islam with some of their hateful rhetoric in the 90s.
Allah wants to kill the white man.
And then I got so many death threats, and my family was young. They certainly didn't sign up for that.
All right, welcome back to the War Room. I'm now joined in studio by David Summerall, and you started the website StopHate.com.
Yes.
StopHate.com? That is $1 million idea. Who's that? And you're like, they were like, David Summerall, the guy you met. I was like, oh my gosh, we got to get him in studio.
So I just did what I could in my own community. Never tried to really make it a big organization or group. So we started Make America Stop Hate, a different brand during the Trump administration.
This is a friend of Allie's who gave me this hat. I don't quite understand it.
What is it?
Make America Stop Hate.
Oh.
What?
My friends were going to the Stop the Steal rallies. I showed up in Austin for another rally, and a friend said, hey, would you like to be involved with this? And I said, yeah, it's a good cause. election integrity is very important, of course. So I stayed in Austin, ended up running most of the events down there for Stop the Steal in the months leading up to January 6th. And then, of course, on January 6th, I did not want to go to DC. I was tired, I was spent, I was broke, going to Austin back and forth from Dallas every weekend. So I decided to stay home on January 6th, and everyone prodded me, encouraged me, asked me to go, and my wife said, I really think you need to go. It's been almost 30 years of doing the Stop Hate campaign, and my friends were saying, how to recognize different things. You've dealt with Antifa, you've dealt with BLM, you've done events all around the country, so you kind of need to go. So I decided to put a film crew together and go to DC to January 6th and film for history what actually happened, because I know the media will never tell the truth.
No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side.
My name is Trennis Evans, and I went to January 6th not to be an insurrectionist, but because I felt called to be there. It was a duty that I had. I had to respond to the stolen elections. They had to hear our voices and know that something like that couldn't take place without the American people having something to say about it. January 6th was cold, and it was cold for so many reasons, but there was a warmth of community. There was a spiritual warmth within us. We had hope. We had a belief that something good was coming, and that's where the real misconception comes in, that we were all dark-hearted and there for something other than the true purpose of demonstration.
States want to revote. The states got defrauded. They were given false information. They voted on it. Now they want to recertify. They want it back.
The reason I wanted to be at January 6th is I wanted to demonstrate my support for the people that were doing the right thing, the people that were going to give the states an opportunity to review the information from this election and let those legislators really have a chance to make a determination as to what the correct action was, the correct will of the people per their vote.
This is video of a man called Daniel Goodwin walking through the Capitol through an open door on January 6, 2021 at exactly 3:32 p.m. That is long after the doors were breached. The legal team was also provided this video, and in it you can clearly see that Goodwin was inside for less than a minute, and when he was asked to leave, he left. So there's no dispute about any of that. It's all on tape. But the DOJ is still trying to send Daniel Goodwin to prison, and in the meantime, they have completely wrecked his life. Daniel Goodwin joins us now, along with his lawyer, Carol Stewart. Thanks to both of you for coming on. First to you, Daniel.
My name is Daniel Goodwin. I went to the Capitol on January 6, 2021, because Donald Trump tweeted about it. We were going there to stop steal. I went there also, to do some investigative journalism type stuff. And people said, Antifa might show up, so I was thinking, all right, well, I'll try and see if I see anything. So when I got to the Capitol, I basically meandered into an open door with police standing around not saying anything. When I was inside, they asked me to leave. I was in there for between 30 and 40 seconds, and then I left. They raided my house that same month. A FBI counterterrorism task force, SWAT team, pre-dawn raid, Roger Stone style. They had a medieval-style battering ram. They were pointing laser guns at my whole family, traumatizing everyone there. They had us all come out, yelling at us, put everybody in shackles except for my mom, who was the last one out. I didn't want to talk to them, so I would just say, you can talk to my lawyer, no matter what they said. They were really worried and scared about COVID-19. So they, after they had me in handcuffs, were trying to put a mask on me. I didn't want the mask. So I kind of moved my jaw around like this and got the masks off. In the FBI report, they put in, he chewed through 5 masks, which is not how I would characterize the situation. But anyways, they took me to the Fannin County Jail, locked me away, and they said because of COVID quarantine lockdown that I had to be in solitary confinement for 3 weeks there. Then when I finally got out, I was in house arrest for 13 months. And then after that, I was still restricted in Texas. And then while I was in jail, I had 4 misdemeanors. They added a 5th charge, which was the 1512 felony obstruction charge that carries 20 years. I took a plea deal and they dropped the 1512 charge, and so I ended up with just a misdemeanor. And that's how I got a 2 months prison sentence. And after the 2 months prison, I had a year of supervision. And in the supervision, there was a computer monitoring restriction.
The first time I ever heard that I was being charged with the 1512 obstruction of Congress was when I saw the magistrate. I received my paperwork. I'd already been arrested, hauled to the FBI building, fingerprinted, pictured, taken to the Federal Detention Center hours away. We skipped the one near my home, by the way, and went hours away to one further south. I was in this maximum security facility, Federal Detention Center, with the worst people that you can imagine. People that were guilty of hundreds of pounds of cocaine and methamphetamine and drug runners and cartel members that had been rounded up, human traffickers. I go in to see the magistrate, and just before you do, they hand you your paperwork. I was blown away. It said felony 1512 obstruction of Congress, and it has a penalty out there what the charge weighs in at 20 years. And I was like, this has got to be a mistake. Like, what the hell could be happening here? This can't be. I didn't obstruct Congress. It was so early on. And I was arrest number 225. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yes.
FBI.
Yes. All right, you can't step out with us, please, sir.
I'll never forget the morning that they showed up with the battering ram, armed to the teeth, and putting my 13-year-old son at gunpoint. Dragged my wife outside in her nightgown. They waited until we were in a hard time as a family and we were going to a funeral, my father-in-law. So my wife and I are headed to the funeral with our children that weekend, going to the viewing of the body. And they show up to make their arrest late on their Thursday pre-dawn raid so that they can keep you in jail over the weekend. You're not going to see the magistrate on Friday. Want to hold you till Monday. The same consistent effort. That way they can hope they can get you to talk or crack. Something can happen ahead of time that they want. Or to just blister you with punishment.
Look, red hat backwards. I saw it do it. It's the red hat backwards. Get the Antifas. Red hat backwards. Red hat backwards. I saw it do it.
Make it make sense for me, America. Help me understand how the most armed populace on the face of the planet chose to show up at the seat of government, and they came to overthrow the United States government, the largest military-industrial superpower on the planet. And they came with plastic flagpoles and megaphones. And not only that, but military veterans, police officers, good men and women who had taken oaths, chose to do that and run under the cover of children and grandparents and pregnant women. I don't think that you can make that make sense anywhere in history. The narrative of insurrection, based on that statement alone, is as dead as the minds of the people that believe it.
It's almost like the stage was made for us. Probably get us up on a pedestal.
They see you guys. Don't cause any trouble. You're right. Don't listen to these guys. Don't cause any trouble. Who are those guys? Who are they? I don't know, but don't attack the police. Don't cause any
They try to set us up. That's what they're trying to do.
You know what? They had this set up to do this. They did. There's no way they didn't. They set this up for us.
USA! 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 USA!
Well, the select committee had actually, they had an impression on not only the Washington, D.C. jury pool, but the entire country, but there's a reason for that. They partnered with the legacy media and the biggest media corporations in the country and produced Hollywood-style committee hearings in order to make sure that everyone was brainwashed to believe that January 6th was an insurrection when it was not.
To bring in a guy like this who would think outside the box really did prove to be fruitful. And it was Goldston who really began to envision this as, in a way, a kind of mini-series, that there would be, sort of 9 episodes, and that these episodes would tackle particular themes.
We were either gonna, make people realize that this was important, or once you've lost them, you've lost them for good.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection.
We wanted to make sure that this was a presentation that would grab the audience and hold on to them. Chairman Thompson loved to say, it's got to pop.
What they did is they sold the lie day in and day out.
We have seen growing evidence that the dangers to our country can come not only across borders, but from violence that gathers within.
We always have to be aware of and protect against external threats, but what really is tearing our country apart and threatening our democracy is what we saw on January 6th.
So the people of January 6th have been labeled as insurrectionists, seditionists, the worst people on the planet. We've consistently heard this message that it was like 9/11. We've consistently heard the message that it was the worst attack on our nation since Pearl Harbor.
9/11 is nothing compared to January 6th. And the fact that the FBI and the rest of the government, if they are not on the same sort of war footing that we were on in the weeks and months and years after 9/11, shame on everyone.
We've been very clear from the beginning that what we saw on January 6th was the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
These are absolutely untrue, and as we've said for a long time, that it certainly represents something more like Kent State or Tiananmen Square from a perspective of what people experienced that day and how the government responded or treated the citizenry. A key historical point that we need to recognize would be what happened with the Wisconsin State House in 2011. So please remember that during that time there was a historic union vote going on for the state. The people that appeared for that assaulted people on the ground, assaulted officers, broke their way and forced their way past police into the building. They held the Wisconsin State House for some near 2 weeks. Dozens of people bragged about being arrested as many as 12 and 15 times.
Yesterday's 6 p.m. meeting was announced at exactly 4:10 p.m. and protesters who rushed the building in connection with that vote, reportedly smashing windows, forcing their way through windows, through doors, and into the Capitol.
And Nancy Pelosi was among the first of the politicians to weigh in on the matter, and she called that democracy in action.
As we gather here in Wisconsin right now, we are watching an extraordinary show of democracy in action. Wisconsin's workers, teachers, and public servants must have a seat at the table to fight for good wages and a safe workplace. I stand in solidarity with the Wisconsin workers fighting for their rights.
So after January 6th, I knew this was going to be an attack on the people in the most vile way. When we got back to the hotel that night, the reports were already of the insurrection narrative. And you had people in the government immediately, from Joe Biden calling us insurrectionists to Michael Sherwin saying that this was a shock and awe campaign.
I wanted to ensure, and our office wanted to ensure, that there was shock and awe, that we could charge as many people as possible.
And soon to follow, Benny Thompson and others, Judge Howell, I believe, was, putting stricter punishment or travel restrictions.
We are here today because the folks, the people, the insurrectionists who breached the U.S. Capitol fall under the definition of threats to the homeland and should be immediately added to the TSA no-fly list.
A lot of people from January 6th and even their family members are put on this thing called the Quiet Skies list, or the Quad S list. The reason it's called Quad S is because you get your boarding pass and there's 4 S's on there. It's so ridiculous that they even have people on this who are J6ers, maybe they're a family member. And I'll give you a great example. AJ Fisher's baby is on that list. So what is that? He's got like a terrorist baby? It's ridiculous.
One of the most atrocious things in this January 6th experience has been the total deprivation of constitutional rights. People do not understand that when these J6ers who went to DC to protest, to, make their voices heard, use their free speech, or to gather in a group, or to pray, either religious freedom or even media, they were all thrown into one basket of, you're a terrorist here to overthrow the government, and they were not allowed to use the First Amendment in their legal defense. So imagine you not being able to say why you went to DC in the first place, to protest, to make my voice heard, for religion, for God and country, anything. You can't use the First Amendment in your defense. I think that taints the whole story and the whole court situation for so many people that didn't know going into that they weren't going to be able to use their God-given rights in their own defense. And that's the deprivation from this government in trying to force this control in such an unconstitutional way.
Yes, I believe the judges that presided over these cases against January 6 defendants, I believe they were extremely politically biased. These judges abused their benches, and they weaponized the power of their decisions politically against people that protested an election. It's so unconstitutional, it's so wrong. The American people own the elections. They own every election in this country because they're the people, their votes, they own their votes. The American people pay for the elections through their taxes. So they own their elections, and they can protest an election if they want to. That's a First Amendment right. And these judges totally went with the entire lie and the narrative that the Democrats set up and punished people punitively in horrific ways with their sentencing.
We'll start with the awesome. We start seeing other people march out of here with cuffs. That's what I want to see. Let's start playing around with these things.
Everybody, this must be peaceful. This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
I was up here peacefully praying for a police officer when I was shot in the face with a flashbang grenade. I
can't hear out of my left ear. I have second-degree burns on my face. My hair caught on fire. I can barely see out of this eye.
So to date, we've had about 1,600 people that have been charged, indicted, I guess, with crimes surrounding January 6th. It's a revolving door. They come in, they come out. We still have a couple of the original guys that signed away on their due process rights that have not had their trials yet. Of course, they've been charged, but they're sitting in prison waiting for their trials 4 years later. That seems like it's a little bit intentional by the government to stretch this out so long. And those due process violations like we talked about, listen, nobody got a fair trial. If you can't use your evidence, if you don't get due process, if you can't get a change of venue and a jury of your peers, if they have all these Brady violations that you can't even really tell the story of why you were there, nobody got a fair trial.
Remember, we talked about the story that's being written about Danny, right? Danny gets to choose if he writes a story today with us. But right now, the story that's being told is by DC, is by Antifa, BLM, and the Huffington Post, and is going to be told by the people that we're talking to today that choose to talk to us. And they may tell a story about the Danny Rodriguez. So if you're making things up or you're leaving things out, that puts us in a bad spot, because we can't go to the prosecutor and say, no, Danny's a stand-up guy.
I haven't made anything. I haven't lied or made anything up.
Okay. Well, but.
And then when you frame that in the media to say, oh, we got 800 of these people to take a plea deal, but you don't say that you intimidated them and threatened them with a 20-year charge that 3 years later turned out to be illegal for you to use against them because it was not applicable, but nobody goes back and tells that story. I think it's reminiscent to the Officer Brian Sicknick story, where he died of a stroke the next night. They blamed his death on J6ers and said that we beat his head in with a fire extinguisher. Total fabrication. The paramedics that got to his body said that he didn't have any damage to his head.
We were sent to the Capitol grounds. We heard the radio traffic from Capitol Police that they had a officer in cardiac arrest on the in the North Corridor in the stairwell.
We have a medical logo inside the Capitol, CPR on the Capitol Police officer.
Me and the rest of the crew got escorted down into the Capitol, where we found a downed officer.
The patient was laying on the ground on his side, had other officers around him. I asked what exactly had happened, and the other officers said they didn't know that he had just collapsed.
Just going to be a priority one non-conscious person, Chief.
The other officers were trying to do CPR on him, but he was actually not in cardiac arrest. So we kind of pulled everybody back, and then the Capitol physicians got there, and we started coordinating his care while we were waiting on Engine 2, Medic 2, and EMS 4, who were initially dispatched on the run to get down there.
There's so much set up with the media and with the information. This is an information war. And like we titled our first movie, Writing History, the journalistic battle of January 6th, that's truly what it is. The journalists have tried to control the narrative, the story, and decide what the public does and doesn't learn. And it's up to us to spread the truth so people know what actually happened on January 6th and can treat it accordingly. It was Patriot Day to so many people that experienced it because of what the people did, the heroes that stood against the police, that didn't overreact. There were enough people there to wipe the police out, but they did not. There's reasons for that. The crowd controlled itself, and it's amazing to think that they were blamed for deaths when they didn't cause any. The police caused 4. And it's never mentioned. That's intentional.
Hundreds of January 6th defendants may like to have gone to trial, to have had that day in court of something that we've always understood to be our opportunity. Yet if you didn't take the plea deal, if you didn't assign yourself to some level of guilt, you were going to be charged with every crime, you were going to be convicted of every crime in DC, and your appeal, you weren't going to go free until your appeal, so you're going to do your years in prison. And not only that, but those that refused plea deals were hit with superseding indictments. And the government regularly threatened superseding indictments. If your person doesn't plead guilty to this, we're gonna hit him with a felony.
I wanted the judge to know that the feds are threatening me with a felony. And I'm glad that I said it. So either way, I'm glad that I was able to expose the truth in the court. He not only did he not know that, but the federal prosecutor denied that on the record under oath, which is a literal lie, because that was literally threatened to my attorney. I couldn't just accept a guilty plea and not tell the judge where I'm coming from, because I think it's very important to be well, I want to go to trial, but if the feds are going to threaten me with felonies, then I think I got to take the deal. And the judge was shocked, whoa, what? And then the prosecutor's we would never say that. It's you literally said it.
So they extorted plea deals from many Americans. They used this malicious prosecution and extortion tactics. That's what terrorism is. When people with guns threaten you, force you into doing something. So the real terrorists in this equation are the FBI, the DOJ, and the judges who allowed this.
It's clear that all the judges in the DC District Court are completely biased. And it's kind of crazy that they're the one who gets to decide in terms of the change of venue. So people are saying, okay, I don't think I can get a fair trial in this area because everyone's left wing. And then the judge is like, I don't feel like you won't get a fair trial. Yeah, well, you're the one who's left wing, so maybe you shouldn't be the one deciding.
We were able to bring in more experts than had ever been assembled, and these were government experts, including Dr. Sigmund Freud's daughter, who came in on the psychology side of this, Dr. Ruva, who was the change of venue expert for Tassarov, and that was the Boston bomber. We had put together and assembled the greatest team of experts to support not only the data, but the science and the psychology of change of venue. We presented this in our motion, which was the largest change of venue that had ever been entered into the record. And not only that, the government, in their effort to respond, asked for extensions 2 different times, and were granted 2 two-week extensions. So in their month-long effort of extension, they never were able to find an expert witness to come back. They were never able to actually refute this, and they went on to file the same nonsensical effort that they filed in case after case, as if we never filed anything new. The judge, pinned in by this and knowing that he was going to lose on appeal, decided to answer this with no opinion, denying our change of venue effort in the A.J. Fisher case.
The Brady violations is probably the biggest thing, because that's the evidence that would set these people free and show that they didn't do what the government said. I mean, case in point, one of the guys was holding his hand up, fist bumping the cops basically in the air. And they used a still picture of that. And if they had rolled the video, they would have seen that he was saying, yay, we like the cops. But they took a freeze frame and said, oh, look, he was being mean to the cops and had his fist in the air. And they put him in jail for 3 years, I believe. So these are the kind of situations that people, when they see it in the media, they think, well, they must have been guilty of something because they went through the process and they're in jail now, so they must be guilty. But that is not the way this system works. And it's being exposed more day by day.
There was a time when I think I wanted to believe that these judges needed to see the truth, that they had been lied to and maybe had taken this information in, kind of bought this story hook, line, and sinker maybe. But there became a point of no return when we passed the idea that they didn't know. So much evidence had been presented that it's untenable to think that these people, these judges, didn't have the proper knowledge to understand this event as a whole. And what did they do? They doubled down. They continued the assault on constitutional rights. Judge after judge after judge, be it Timothy Kelly, or Judge Royce Lamberth, or Dabney Friedrich, or Beryl Howell, or Colleen Kohler-Catelli, Judge Amit Mehta, they used terminology like insurrectionist. They used terminology of insurrection in reference to me. And they allowed assistant United States attorneys, these prosecutors, to incorrectly label me in their courts, and they took part in that. It might be a situation, it might be concerning, I should say, if they said Mr. Evans is a bad person, or Mr. Evans is a big dummy. whatever it is they might want to say. But when you falsely label me with something that is a crime, a criminal statute, as the term insurrectionist, when the actual crime that I committed was trespassing at best, that's problematic. You don't call jaywalkers murderers and get away with it in a court of law.
In comparison from what happened on January 6th as to, say for instance, the Summer of Love, all the BLM activity and, you know, the burning of cities and destruction of property and broken glass.
The George Floyd protests are unique in scope. It's not one city. It's more than 20 states. That is a large chunk of the country reporting losses, and these protests have now gone international. And that's why the insurance industry is predicting these protests will become the costliest case of civil unrest in U.S. history.
I don't recall any BLMers being hunted down for 4 years for any of the things that they did. Even the policemen that were killed or the innocent people that were, you know, killed or injured in all those riots, actual riots. Then you see the position that they've taken against these grandmas and people that were there praying.
When things got out of hand on January 6th, all of a sudden they became the party of law and order. But they weren't the party of law and order. See, they were the communists the entire time.
The BLM would be considered offense, and J6 would be purely considered defense.
All right, look at this. Some disturbing images here. This man, he was at a peaceful rally up in San Francisco. Look at that. Oh, he was there. His name's Philip Anderson. He was there to go rally in front of Twitter, to call attention to how Twitter is banning conservative voices and the Hunter Biden scandal story. While he was trying to leave the area, look at these Antifa thugs. They punch him repeatedly in the mouth, knocking his teeth out. He now has thousands in dental bills. I'm sure some trauma and PTSD after being attacked. There he is.
Well, the left wrote the playbook on political violence. We can look back to President Trump's inauguration in 2017, where they nearly burned down the very city that we're sitting in, Washington, D.C. Then they proceeded to create ground troops that fought every single angle of whatever political effort President Trump was trying to take, and his supporters.
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome.
But Michelle says that, you know, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them. That's what this new Democratic Party is about.
What they have done is they have funded not only the political violence against us for years, they have funded the ripping the fabric of America to shreds. And then when they took power, they took the power that they were handed, or actually they stole it. That's the truth. They stole that power with the 2020 election, and then they turned it into a weapon and directed it at their perceived political enemies. And part of the reason why they prosecuted people so harshly is they had to create the lie that to back up that President Trump is this he's a Nazi, he's Hitler, he's abusing power, he'll be a dictator, he'll never leave office, and this is his army. This is his army that's going to come in and help him take over. And it was just a lie the whole time.
There was an actual insurrection, if you want to call it that, in, say, Seattle or wherever, where these people literally have these autonomous zones. And they take over the area, and then they don't let in police, they don't let in an ambulance or fireman. People get shot, people die in those places. Like, I'm pretty sure that's treasonous or something. Like, you can just take over. I mean, it's not their land. They're like, that's an actual insurrection. But what happens to them? I mean, I don't know. Have you guys seen a website on the Justice Department, justice.gov, that has a list of all the people from CHOP or Chaz? I haven't, but there's definitely a list of J6ers on the Justice website. So there's definitely not the same treatment. Did they have a manhunt after them? Did they give press conferences every time one of them got arrested? Did they all have these crazy raids that they go after them and arrest them and convict them and sentence them to really long sentences, like up to 22 years? I don't think so.
In the 1984 Sentencing Reform Act, it was made clear that the cases should be adjudicated in like manners the same, or with great similarity. Yet the judges of the district chose to operate with a new jurisprudence that they created and concocted solely for January 6 defendants. In other words, they wanted stronger beatings and lashings for these individuals. Whether it was grandma that walked in and said a prayer, or an individual that simply walked through carrying a flag, they said they desecrated democracy, that they tore at the fabric of democracy and made all of these unhinged rants.
They literally hunted down protesters that may have been guilty of misdemeanors, which the FBI doesn't usually, deal with in the first place. But then they put these same people in federal prisons where there was nothing but felons in those prisons, and they could hardly believe that misdemeanor defendants were put in the prison in the first place. So the treatment in that respect, the segregation of the prisoners when they're in prison, the SHU as they call it, the isolation tank basically that they put people in for extended period of times, is beyond torture. Geneva Convention, if we were at war, would not allow what these people have done to J6ers. And I think that's the reality that people have missed out on. You've got a grandma that's supposed to be sentenced for a misdemeanor. She's supposed to go to a minimum care facility, basically a halfway house. And at the last minute, someone in the DOJ or a judge somewhere says, no, you're going to one of the worst women's prisons in the country, which has now been since shut down.
FCI Dublin has become so notorious for sexual assaults behind its walls that some have nicknamed it the Rape Club. But now the world is finally learning about what's been going on inside. Women who experience the abuse are speaking publicly for the first time.
The defendant was bludgeoned with an extreme amount of evidence against them. But it wasn't actually evidence against them, it's just events and video the entire day. But somehow defense counsel was supposed to go through all of this. When those videos, to have gone through them, and what might be relative to your case, would have taken over a year to watch individually, maybe 2, depending on if you wanted to just look at the area where the individual was. But entrapment or any of those things, how would you know when the government never gave us all of the information? And still today, we do not have all the information. But in the middle of trial, you might be 2 days in, a weekend, they would dump terabytes of new information on the defense counsel, who maybe at the time had a responsibility to turn over a motion by midnight to the judge for something the defense counsel is asking for. Yet they're somehow supposed to find time to go through video evidence and information that would take multiple people working together months, if not another year.
We're not here to hurt anyone. I'm not backing up. You're not my ruler. I need my flag. This is my capital. Listen.
It's clear that the January 6th committee and the prosecution and the judges and the mainstream legacy media all colluded together in order to have a narrative of insurrection. And no one was even charged with insurrection. But okay, you want to say maybe, oh, the seditious conspiracy. It's completely bogus. For example, the biggest evidence they have of seditious conspiracy is a document called 1776 Returns that was on Enrique Tarrio's phone. The problem is, he didn't write it, there's no proof he even read it, and there's no proof it was even sent to anyone, much less that they acted on it. But even beyond that, if you read the document itself, it doesn't even match an insurrection or seditious conspiracy, much less even match what they actually did. So, it's the weakest argument you can imagine, but in these DC courts, you're gonna end up with a jury who's like 99% Democrat and then 1% just a never Trumper type of a rhino. And they feel like they are gonna get revenge on Trump by convicting these January 6ers who Trump doesn't even know, which is ridiculous. It's just bogus.
You know, we've got Proud Boys that were horribly mistreated in their trials, all kinds of Brady violations, exculpatory evidence, witness intimidation, everything you can imagine. There was over 20 different reasons that the Proud Boys should have been a mistrial. Probably the same with the Oath Keepers trials. And yet there they sit in prison, guilty by association. Enrique Tarrio wasn't even in DC. And yet you got Biggs and Rufio guys that didn't do anything wrong, but they're capable of doing something wrong, so they're going to put them in prison. This is not the America that I grew up in.
The rest of our fellow Americans, Lord, pray that, you soften the hearts of those who have turned hard towards you. Pray for both those and our government that turned harshly away from you, as well as others in our society, Lord. Pray and realize that the only way value systems and socialism, capitalism, and that you would wish for us, Lord, to understand that family is the institution you put on this earth that's most important to us.
Are we going inside? I want to go inside.
No, we're not going inside.
Well, shit, I did in Boise with Adam Bundy.
I mean, if you want to go inside.
No, we did. We went in Boise. I know you. You look familiar. Are you the Proud Boys?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to help you guys and give you a room.
Find out about what events are happening tonight around the time when the sun starts to go down, because we know that's when Antifa likes to go out and start attacking people as they leave, as we saw last night in some areas. So we want to try to go ahead and do as much risk mitigation as we can, find the areas that we need to get located at, and try to, protect some of these people.
The 10% of the cases, I'll call them more complex conspiracy cases, where we do have evidence that's in the public record, where individual militia groups from different facets, Oath Keepers, 3 Percenters, Proud Boys, did have a plan, we don't know what the full plan is, to come to DC, organize, and breach the Capitol in some manner.
A majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence.
Democracy is a threat to white supremacy and vice versa. And we're about to learn a lot more about the role such movements and groups had on the coordinated bid to agitate crowds into storming the Capitol on January 6th.
In my opinion, the Oath Keepers are a very dangerous organization. They may not like to call themselves a militia, but they are. They're a violent militia.
Yeah, but if you guys could help me extract these people, I'd appreciate it.
They're not going to leave. You want them to leave?
No, they can stay there. I just need to get the other officers out.
Oh, you need to get
They're trying to get out. Scared.
I can do that.
Like Donald Trump himself, these far-right extremist groups are united in racism, sexism, and a thirst for violence.
So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
Did the Proud Boys have a plan to go
into the Capitol?
Into the Capitol.
Absolutely not.
Talking about no specific communication about breaching the Capitol, but talking about going there, taking back the House, talking about stopping the steal, talking about how they need a show of force in DC.
And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal.
The Class B misdemeanor parading and picketing is typically resolved with a ticket of $50, and you see the magistrate and it's over. Except for these Class B misdemeanors, we actually sent SWAT teams out and kicked down doors, used flashbang grenades. That's how the Class B misdemeanors for January 6th defendants were resolved. James Little took his case to the appellate court and said that he was sentenced improperly outside of the 1984 sentencing guideline structure, where a petty misdemeanor must be resolved with a maximum of 6 months in jail or a maximum of 6 months probation, and there is no combination effort of those two to be used. So after serving months in a prison and then being on probation for well over a year, his case finally hits the appellate. He's ordered to be resentenced, and what does the judge do? The judge stomps the jackboot of tyranny right back on James Little's neck and sends a message to the rest of the January 6 defendants who had their cases resolved with a Class B misdemeanor, don't show up here to be resentenced, because what did they do? They sent Mr. Little back to prison. So he had already served a prison term. He had already served a probation term well beyond the 6 months. The pretrial monitoring that Mr. Little had to go through, like everyone else, when on pretrial and being monitored by the government for quite some time before, a year or 2 years before. So then you experience that. But this is how the judge chose to resolve his case. It was a message sent, just like they do with everything else.
Mr. Evans, you've already served time for January 6th, is that correct?
Yes, the government was kind enough to provide me a federal prison stay for demonstrations.
Did you be clear, did you burn down the Capitol on January 6th?
No, I actually would have been better off if I were an Antifa protester that would have burned $34,000 worth of federal property that was sentenced on the same day as me, who assaulted an officer and while on pretrial release, assaulted another officer and a civilian, and who got just probation and a small fine and went home.
You would have had a 95% chance of having your charges dropped, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's correct.
Did you assault anyone on January 6th?
Only the fabric of democracy, I hear.
Thank you. God bless you for your humor.
So you may have concluded correctly that virtually everything you have heard screamed at you for 3 years about January 6th is a lie. Joining us now is David Sumrall. He's one of the producers of this documentary, and we're very glad to have him join us. David, thanks so much for coming on. So you've been involved in trying to figure out what happened that day for the last 3 years, and you did this amazing public service for the rest of us by putting together this documentary. Tell us some of the things that you learned from this.
Well, I think it's the things we didn't learn from anybody else. The Select Committee had every opportunity with all the evidence to put a documentary out that showed what happened that day. But the discovery in this video, I think the public really needs to see, and that's why they've kept it hidden and dangled it like a carrot over the public for so long, for 3 years. There is so much video around that West Tunnel taken by individual citizens. And you'll notice around some of those areas, it's not the government footage that was important this whole time. It was the people's footage that they took from their cameras. And you can see Colt McCoby trying to help the police, pulling them off the ground, talking to him. They're thanking him. Thank you for helping.
Speaker McCarthy promised that he would release all the footage from January 6th. All the J6ers want the footage released. So when the footage is released, we have exculpatory evidence. When the footage is not released, what do we have? Well, all the bad parts are already out there, because anything they find that makes you look bad, they put it out there. So the only evidence out there that we don't see is the stuff that's going to help. The whole reason we got rid of Speaker McCarthy was to get someone who would do this. We get in Speaker Johnson, and he slow rolls it. To this day, they haven't even released it all.
The empty promise of Mike Johnson was to release all the footage, but somehow after an intelligence briefing, he determined that couldn't be done. I'm tired of empty promises. I'm tired of politicians telling me one thing. You got the position. We, the people, rallied behind you. We wanted McCarthy gone because they wouldn't release the footage. When in history have you ever heard of the criminals demanding more footage of their crime? Why is it that the collective voice of the January 6th community is to release all the footage? I contend, because I've seen it all, and all that's important, that if the footage is ever actually released to the American people, the only danger to national security is probably to the members of Congress who've hidden it from the American people this amount of time.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh. All right. Yeah, just man. praying.
You have milk?
I'm fine, man. I'm great, man. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, man.
Hey guys, let's fight.
Let's fucking.
Guys, thank you. Thank you for each other. Thank you for letting us stand up for our country and what we believe in. Guide us so we may do your will. I pray for that, and I pray for these brothers that stand beside you. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
To make matters worse, the coroner that ruled on the 4 deaths from January 6, Roseanne Boyland, Ashley Babbitt, Kevin Greeson, and Benjamin Phillips, is the same coroner that weighed in on the George Floyd coroner's decision and changed it so that Chauvin would end up in jail, if you're familiar with the George Floyd story. This is the same coroner that said Roseanne Boyland died of a drug overdose when she's obviously on video being gassed, trampled, and beaten by one of the police officers there in the tunnel. And then you've got Kevin Greeson and Benjamin Phillips that the media said, oh, they died of natural causes, a stroke and a heart attack. But they don't show where they were in the crowd and what was happening and the pressure, the struggle, the emotion, the frustration, or the lack of support from the police. That's the negligence part. When you let someone lay there on the ground and die and don't get them help, that's on you. You're responsible for that, and you didn't help these good people.
Yeah, I highly suspect that they destroyed evidence. They didn't hand over everything that we asked for them to give us when they ended the 117th Congress, and Republicans, we took the majority at the 118th Congress. They didn't hand over everything. And yeah, I do believe that they destroyed evidence.
One thing we said after January 6th was that we were the template, the test subjects, and that it was going to happen to more people. And I specifically said, you know, you're next. And people said, we didn't go to DC. We didn't act like juveniles. We didn't do stupid things. They're not coming for us. And then they went to their school board meeting and said they didn't like CRT. And then that same FBI was banging on their door saying, hey, what are you saying something in public against what we want?
In America, we shouldn't need to say that parents speaking out about their children's education aren't domestic terrorists, or that those raising concerns about the radical direction the left is trying to take this country are not domestic terrorists, or that Trump supporters aren't domestic terrorists, but apparently we do. Because the Biden administration is bound and determined to demonize anyone and everyone not in lockstep with their far left agenda. Last September, the Biden White House colluded with the National School Boards Association to orchestrate a letter to President Biden that portrayed concerned parents speaking out at school board meetings as security threats. The letter urged the president to use the Patriot Act to go after America's moms and dads.
And the reality is, most of this surveillance was happening long before January 6th, during the Stop the Steal rallies, and before. So when you start thinking about the Patriot Act being used on American citizens for government control and power gains, that's a very scary situation to be in.
Sometimes it calls forever.
Come on out! Okay.
You guys are calling.
I'm not hurting you. You're not listening.
The trauma from January 6th has not only been for the J6 defendants themselves, but trickles down to their entire family. You know, it's the breadwinner. If you take him out of the house, that's one thing, but to drag these children and wives out in the street during these raids and for them not to have their father or husband or wife, you know, in their family for years at a time.
Can we go ahead and have you come out? So we're gonna have to clear this residence.
Wait a second. Why is he?
We have an arrest warrant for him, but we need you man to go ahead and step out.
Daddy, what, Mommy? Why are they locking Daddy's hands?
And like one of the J6ers said, there's nothing like going to prison for something you know you're not guilty of, but for the whole family to be able, suffer through this entire experience. And we've seen divorces. The Department of Justice wants to make this as expensive as possible. The attorneys are not cheap. So people lose everything, their retirement, their homes, their vehicles, their wives, their children. We've seen everything that you can imagine. We've had over 10 suicides in our community just from the pressure of the Department of Justice and the FBI in fear of these raids, in fear of going for prison for something you didn't do. And a lot of people can't take that pressure, but it's very intentional. And I think that the cost to the family has been greater than the public realizes yet. And hopefully President Trump will help rectify that situation and bring some sort of compensation or something to these families as a whole to help repair the damage that's been done.
In 6 days, we have opened over 160 case files, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The significance of this investigation is not lost on us. This is a 24/7, full-bore, extensive operation into what happened that day.
The interesting part about Stephen D'Antuono, who was the FBI chieftain of DC for the Washington field office, is that he had just come from successfully carrying out the false flag event on the Gretchen Whitmer situation.
These people were framed by the FBI. There were more FBI agents involved than people, and yet they created this big narrative that they were trying to kidnap and possibly kill the governor, which was bogus. But it was almost a precursor or a setup, the same script basically that they used to develop for January 6th. And one of the guys, Stephen D'Antuono, moved from that field office to DC just before January 6th. Of course, he's up for retirement. Everybody's up for retirement. Matthew Graves, Christopher Wray, all the bad guys seem to be trying to tuck tail and run before Trump gets into office.
And Cheney was behind it, and so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did, honestly, they should go to jail.
I have never voted for a Democrat, but this year I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Liz Cheney, she needs to be disbarred. And I think we can look at criminal charges for her, but it shouldn't stop with her. It's like, why just stop with her? Benny Thompson is another one that needs to be investigated. All of them need to be investigated. And just because they're members of Congress doesn't mean that they should be protected for how they destroyed people's lives. Actually, how they built a narrative and built an entire plot and then destroyed people's lives with what they built.
The work we've done to expose them, to expose these unnatural and incestuous relations, to show how the prosecutors' wives are taking part in incredible acts like Fatima Ghost Graves and Matthew Graves. These people do not hold American ideology. They certainly don't respect our civilization, our culture, who we are as a country, or anything to do with the law. They're simply there to undermine everything that we hold dear. They're simply there to act as partisan puppets. And nobody that would take on such an action deserves to be on the bench. It's why the House Judiciary was formed. The feckless members of Congress, in their usual uncourageous manner, would only write strongly worded letters and potentially give us some media highlights. But damned if they would have the actual brass and gall to uphold their position and bring these people in for accountability, to bring us Beryl Howe, to bring before the people, to bring before a congressional committee the actions of one Timothy Kelly and Judge Amit Mehta, these partisan lunatics who support this Marxist communist ideology. You don't have to look any further than Judge Chutkan to see that her grandfather, Frank Hill, was actually responsible for starting the Marxist Communist Ideological Party in Jamaica, where she's from. These people did not matriculate from the places you came from. They didn't grow up under your streetlights. They didn't play tag and live in our cities and adopt Western culture and assimilate to this nation. These people came here with an idea. They were indoctrinated, and they came here with something that runs very afoul of the United States Constitution. And people like the Manchurian candidate, Barack Obama, are largely responsible for this.
Oh, you're some
crazy communists, that's going to take away everybody's property. And, I mean, those are interesting intellectual arguments, but I think for your generation, you should be practical and just choose from what works. You don't have to worry about whether it neatly fits into socialist theory or capitalist theory. You should just decide what works.
With regard to the question regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know, and I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
But we do begin tonight with the backlash after President Biden pardoned his son Hunter, issuing a, quote, full and unconditional pardon to his son.
The individual actions of a career criminal like Hunter Biden and the actions that he took over there were so heinous and so devastating to so many people, including children, apparently, if you watch those videos. The depravity of the one individual doesn't begin to rise to the collective action of every single January 6th defendant present that day for anything they could ever do in a lifetime.
Pardons are necessary. There's no way around this. You can't reset the system if the system won't reset itself. And we've proven over and over through these courts, they will not self-correct. DC is a swamp of corruption. They have proven themselves for the last 4 years against these good people, and it's time for a change.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, I think that it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
There is no reason why any president must consider preemptive pardons.
The only reason I know to ask for a pardon is because you think you've committed a crime.
And so if he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
Is there an innocent explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
The answer to that is going to be no.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons.
Well, in his final hours as president, Joe Biden made a few radical moves of his own. He issued presidential pardons to people who've never been charged with anything. They include his own siblings and their spouses, and politicians and public figures that he believes need protection from a vengeful Trump regime.
Once there was a time where everyone clutched their pearls and feigned astonishment over the events of January 6th. But that didn't change because of Donald Trump. It didn't change because of the politicians and their strongly worded letters. We couldn't even get these people to listen for years. All they would talk about is prison abuse. They didn't want to talk about the fact that officers regularly perjured themselves. The Harry Dunns, the Lila Morrises, the Michael Fanones, the Aquino Ganells, and how these people abused people, and how the Select Committee covered up and hid information, and how they manipulated and changed and altered and fraudulently concocted a narrative.
It was never possible for any January 6th defendant to get a fair trial in the District of Columbia. They were convicted the minute they were arrested.
So for God's sake, pardon every January 6th defendant in the name of justice.
Sir? Yes, sir. First, we have a list of pardons and commutations relating to events that occurred on January 6, 2021.
Okay, and how many people is this?
I think this order will apply to approximately 1,500 people, sir.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutations?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there where we're doing further research. Nice to see you again. So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight, frankly. They're expecting it.
Thank you for joining us. Our top story at 6. One of the first things President Donald Trump did when he took office was pardon January 6 defendants. Those pardoned include more than a dozen people from South Texas.
Trennis Evans from Canyon Lake is one of the people at the Capitol on January 6th who was pardoned by President Trump. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor in 2022 and was fined, sentenced to 3 years probation and 20 days of intermittent incarceration.
You were going to meet with first responders today.
Yeah.
But you pardoned people who assaulted first responders.
No, I pardoned people that were assaulted themselves. They were assaulted by our government. I pardoned J6 people who were assaulted by our government. That's who assaulted, and they were treated unfairly. There's never been a group of people in this country, outside of maybe one instance that I can think of, but I won't get into it, that were treated more horribly than the people of J6. So, no, I didn't assault. They didn't assault. They were assaulted. And what I did was a great thing for humanity. They were treated very, very unfairly. There's never been an incident like it.